Hello, my name is Madeline and welcome to my channel Cozy Cottage Chapters, and welcome to my April reading wrap-up. April was a bit of a mixed bag for me in terms of reading. I read some things that I absolutely loved that I think will become all-time favorites, definitely in my favorite books of the year list. And then I had some disappointing reads, some things that just didn't quite work for me for various reasons. So we will just chat about all of that and I will fill you in on what I read this past month. There's a pretty good mix of different genres and things. I finished a couple of nonfiction books. One of them was my book for Lent, and then another one. Pretty diverse reading month for me as always, and I'll just kind of go in order from the first book that I read in the month of April kind of to the last one. Great, so without further ado, let's just get into it. The first book I read in April was The First State of Being by Erin Antrada Kelly. I said in my March reading wrap-up that I was looking forward to not reading middle grade in April, and then what do? I pick up a middle grade book for the first book I read in the month. But that's okay. I wanted to get to this, and it was the Newbery winner for 2025, so the most recent Newbery Award book. And I had it on audio from the library, and so I just kind of wanted to pick it up. And I gave this book 3 stars. I kind of, I neither really loved it nor disliked it. It was just kind of meh for me. But basically we're following these 3 kids. Our main character is Michael. He is 13 years old, I believe. And then there's Gibby, who is like 16 or 17, and she is kind of Michael's babysitter. Even though he's old enough to like not need a babysitter, she keeps him company when his mom is at work. And they are living in 1999. And then we have this kid, Ridge, I think is his name, yeah, from the future, 200 years in the future. And he shows up at their apartment one day, kind of looking suspicious, like someone would if they were from 200 years in the future. And Gibby and Michael are, befriend him and kind of learn where he's from. I liked this kind of, 3 kids from different ages, kind of a friendship story. But honestly, the time travel aspect fell a little bit flat. Ridge from 200 years in the future is obsessed with the 90s. It's his favorite time in history. And so he obviously wants to go back to 1999. And I felt like it was just kind of a bummer that the only thing he did and experienced in his favorite time in history was going to the mall. And like, yes, that is peak 90s, early 2000s culture is going to the mall. But there's also so many other things he could have done and experienced, and it just felt kind of underwhelming to me that literally the only thing he did was go to the mall. I wish that there would have been like something else involved. I have a good message at the end about like not being too preoccupied with the future and worrying too much about things. Michael is very, very concerned with Y2K. He is a bit of a prepper. He's stockpiling canned goods and is just very, very concerned that Y2K is going to be kind of the end of the world. And he comes to the end to be a little bit calmer and learn how to just kind of accept that you don't know what's going to happen in the future, and you can't let fear kind of overrule how you live your life now. So that part was really nice, but overall it didn't really feel like a Newbery Award-winning book. I don't know exactly what that means in terms of more modern books, but it just didn't really stand out to me. I don't think it's a book that months or years from now I'm going to really remember much about, or that's going to be something I think about very much. So that was a little bit of a disappointment. Okay, I did actually read another middle grade book after this, but this one was an ARC and I wanted to read it as quickly as possible so that I could write a review and have that up. And that is The Blossoming Summer by Anna Rose Johnson. I absolutely love Anna Rose Johnson's middle grade books. They feel like classic books. They feel just so charming and wholesome and lovely. and this book was no exception. We follow Rosemary, who is a British girl who has been separated from her family for several years now. Her parents weren't able to afford to keep all of the children together, so they went off to live with different family members, friends, things like that. And now they've been reunited, and it is the start of World War II. So the parents decide to take the children and move to America. The father is American originally, and so they move to America to live with his mom for a little bit before they get on their feet. This book is a love letter to gardening, and it's the perfect spring, summertime book because our main character, Rosemary, spends a lot of time in the garden with her grandmother. Her grandmother wants her to help her try to win some prizes in like the county fair. Rosemary works very diligently in the garden and is very involved in that. I loved that part of this story. It's so beautiful. There's just some wonderful themes and messages about family and belonging and discovering your past and your history. It's just such a heartwarming, beautiful, beautiful story. I would highly recommend it. I don't remember when it releases. I believe it's sometime this summer. I will try to pop up the date or some information below in the description box because it is a lovely book and I would definitely recommend trying to get your hands on it when it comes out. I read The Genesis of Gender by Abigail Favale, and I watched an interview of hers on YouTube several years ago and really enjoyed just her way of speaking. She's so eloquent and she has so much knowledge about this subject, but at the same time just approaches things with so much compassion, and I just really enjoyed listening to her and her perspective. And so I had my eyes on this book for a while, and my library finally got an ebook copy of it, so I very quickly got that out on hold and flew through it. I really enjoyed the book. But basically, Abigail Favale was a gender studies professor for many, many years. She has her PhD in women's studies or gender studies, something like that. And she was a professor of that for a long time. Eventually converted to Catholicism and came to the realization that she no longer wanted to be teaching these theories and things that she couldn't really put her weight behind. She couldn't really endorse these things anymore. She no longer believed in them fully. And she wrote this book that just is such a beautiful explanation of kind of the history of feminism, where it came from, who were the people who were involved in shaping these different waves and movements within feminism, and kind of where things went wrong at various points in history, and what mistakes people made when they were trying to talk about women and the challenges and issues that women face in society. Because while there can be some truth to things, there's also some hard turns that got made that kind of derailed things in many ways. So she is able to present the history and theories and whatnot so well because this is what she studied. She also does a really good job of countering that with the Christian, particularly Catholic perspective. And she roots that very much in the Genesis story and also pulls a lot from Theology of the Body by St. John Paul II. And she just does such a beautiful job, like I said, of presenting these kind of two different worldviews and showing why the Christian perspective and this Christian perspective is just so much more humanizing. It is not demeaning, is not, trying to force women to be more like men, which counterintuitively is kind of what happens in the feminist movement. But it's just embracing the uniqueness and fullness of femininity, and it's just such a good book. I highly, highly recommend it. I feel like this should be required reading in 2025 because Abigail Favale just presents things so clearly. She's so knowledgeable, at the same time so compassionate, because she used to be kind of on the other side of the argument, and she used to be arguing the feminist perspective, and she approaches this with just so much compassion and wanting people to be loved. And I can't say enough good things about this book. It was mind-blowing. I would love to get a physical copy of it and be able to annotate it and just have it on hand to return back to, because I feel like this will be a book that every couple of years I would like to return back to, because it's just so deep and so thought-provoking, and I've really, really enjoyed it. This is the last ebook I have, and then my next 3 books are the physical books I read. And I buddy read this with a group put together by Faith. A couple of ladies read this book together, and that is Elizabeth and Her German Garden by Elizabeth von Arman. Unfortunately, I was kind of on the side that did not really enjoy this book so much. You know, everyone kind of enjoyed it to varying degrees, but I did not really like it. I think I gave it 3 stars or 2 stars, 2.5 stars maybe on Goodreads. I don't remember. I did not really enjoy it. I think I gave it like 2 or 2.5 stars. I don't think it was 3 stars. But basically, this is sort of a fictionalized memoir of Elizabeth von Arman, and she is talking a lot about gardening and her love of gardening, which that part I loved. I loved the descriptions of her garden, the flowers that she's growing, kind of how she goes about choosing what she wants to do and planning things. I loved that. That was perfect. Unfortunately, the book took a turn for me when Elizabeth, her character became more kind of important in the story, and it was less about gardening and it was more about her. I found her not to be a really nice lady, not someone you would really want to spend much time around. She's mean to these women. She has this friend who comes to stay with her, and then this other younger woman who they don't really know very well, and her and her friend just kind of gang up on this younger woman and are really mean to her, and just like petty middle school kind of girl drama stuff going on. That was like really weird to read about in a book where the main characters are in their 30s. It just felt ridiculous. She's constantly referring to her husband as the man of wrath, and there's no real explanation of why she refers to him as that. He doesn't seem like a super fun guy either, honestly. He has some comments about women and things that are not super fun. So I'm not saying he's like great or anything, but it was also just kind of strange that she was referring to him as that, and there was no explanation really made for why she's calling him that. It just, in my opinion, it did not reflect very well on her. And she's just kind of constantly pushing people away to be in her garden and in nature, which I understand. I love being alone. I love quiet and solitude. But it felt very extreme from her. Like, she did not want to be with her children. She did not want to be with her husband or friends or anyone. She just wanted to be in her garden. And just as the book went along, it felt like she was just really, really self-centered and selfish. And I had a really hard time with this book. I wanted to enjoy it because, like I said, the nature writing was really beautiful and I loved the descriptions of her garden, but Elizabeth herself was not a character, was not someone I really enjoyed reading about or spending time with in the pages. So this makes me a little hesitant to read more Elizabeth von Arman. I know people really love her, and I don't know, maybe I just missed it. Some people love her humor and said this book was really funny and sarcastic. I did not get that. I did not enjoy it. So I might be in the minority for this one, but unfortunately this was another disappointment for me. And I read Anna and Her Daughters by D.E. Stevenson. This is my first D.E. Stevenson novel, and it's safe to say it will not be my last because I enjoyed this for the most part. There were some slight concerns I had about this book. But basically we're following Jane, who is the youngest daughter in this family. She has 2 older sisters, and Rosalie, I think, are the 2 other sisters. Helen is absolutely terrible. She is not a very nice woman. You're not meant to sympathize with her very much. She is self-centered. She's beautiful. She knows she's beautiful. She's used to getting everything she wants because she's beautiful, and she's just not very fun at all. Jane, on the other hand, is very soft-spoken and very quiet and gets kind of passed over because she's not as beautiful as either of her sisters. And through this book, she really learns to embrace herself, to have more self-confidence, to go for things, and to kind of do what she wants to do also. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed following our heroine as she kind of developed into herself and grew up and matured in a lot of ways. There's a bit of romance in this story, which I, was not opposed to kind of where that was going, but it felt so rushed to me at the end in a matter of sentences. The last couple of sentences tried to throw everything together and kind of wrap up this romance. And it felt so strange to me because all of a sudden the characters are professing their love for each other in the last paragraph. And I felt like I was missing something. I felt like I had skipped over pages, but I hadn't. That was how it was written. So I just kind of wish that things would have developed a bit slower. We would have gotten to see more of the romantic build-up kind of to that moment. Because otherwise it was a really fun book. I was super captivated by it. The writing was lovely, and it was just a very easy book to read and to get into and fall into the story, but the ending felt really rushed for me. I am excited to give D.E. Stevenson a bit more of a chance though, because I do think that her books will be some that I really enjoy. Finally, I have my 2 books that I was reading for Lent. I was able to finish these off before Easter, which I was very happy about. The last week or so I was having to kind of move at a quicker pace because I had fallen a bit behind, but that's okay. I got them done. The first book I read was nonfiction, and that is The Power of the Cross by Raniero Cantamalesa. Cantamalesa is the papal preacher. He's been the papal preacher for 40 years, I think so. And so these are the first 15 years of his Good Friday meditations. They're really good. There were a lot of things that I underlined and made note of. Really enjoyable for me to just kind of work through these Good Friday meditations. A lot in this book about suffering, obviously, the power of suffering, what suffering, how we suffer well, those kinds of questions. There's also a lot about Jesus's spiritual crucifixion, as he refers to it. We think, right, a lot about Good Friday being, Christ's crucifixion, obviously, that physical act of Christ on the cross. But Cantamalesa also points out to not forget the spiritual crucifixion, the spiritual suffering, that separation that Jesus felt. Powerful to read these reflections on this because it wasn't something I have maybe given as much thought to or read as much about or heard as much about, and so I really enjoyed some of the points that he made and the things that he said. There's a lot about Jesus kind of taking on the sin of the world, right? It's something you hear, this phrase, constantly in Mass, and it was something I've never really contemplated very deeply. What was that like? What was that experience? What does it mean? And he does a really good job of unpacking that, of delving into it, and for such a small, short little book, I'm so glad I took my time reading this because it's dense and there's so much to think about and reflect on, and I really enjoyed this. There is an edition put out by Word on Fire, I think, which is all 40 years of his Good Friday reflections. And I'm sure that would be really amazing to have all 40 of them. 15 was already a pretty good number, and I highly recommend this if you're looking for some Lent reading. It is a perfect book to read during Lent. Finally, my last Lent book. This one was fiction. I wanted to read Purgatorio by Dante. This was technically a reread for me. I read it many years ago before I converted to Catholicism, and so I wanted to reread it. I felt like I would get more out of it this time, more appreciation, more understanding for some of the subtle things that Dante is doing, and that's definitely the case. I loved this book so much. Again, I feel like this is the perfect Lent book because Purgatorio just lends itself so well to Lent. In Purgatory, the souls are spending their time in prayer and penance, and the Catholic pillars of Lent are prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. So it just goes really well kind of with that. You would think that this book is really hard to read, and it is at times. There's a seriousness to it, but there's also so much joy because the souls who are in purgatory, they know that they're headed to heaven. They know that that is the end goal, the end result, and there's so much joy. There's singing, there's hope. Kind of, even though they're going through really hard challenges and penance and struggles in purgatory, they know that that is not where they're going to end up, that eventually they will make it to heaven. And so they're going through these penance with a spirit of understanding that this is not just punishment for the sake of punishment's sake. This is to prepare them for heaven. And that is so beautiful and such a wonderful thing to be thinking about and applying to life here on earth. This kind of idea of suffering well, of accepting challenges and going through things to try to better ourselves, to try to make ourselves more holy. I really, really enjoyed this book. One particular part that just stood out to me so much in Canto 5, where Dante is talking to one of the souls in Purgatory. I'm not gonna try to attempt his Italian name. It would be really bad. But he's basically recounting the soul is recounting his life. He was a sinner. He committed all the sins. He was not a great man during his life, and at the end he repented. In his very last breaths, moments on earth, he repented and turned to God. And he's describing this conversation between God and Satan. And he says, "I'll speak the truth. Do you among the living retell it? I was taken by God's angel, but he from hell cried, 'You from heaven, why do you deny me him? For just one tear you carry off his deathless part, but I shall treat his other part and otherwise.'" And he kind of goes on to tell this story, but just that line, "for just one tear," right? God, right? He lived a terrible life. He turned away from God his whole life. For one tear, just one tear at the end, God, God welcomed him and forgave him. And there's just so much beautiful examples of God's mercy, God's love in Purgatorio, and it's just such a good Lent read. Again, kind of the perfect Lent read in my opinion. All right, that is it for my April books. Like I said, it was a mixed bag in terms of reading, but I did finish some really incredible things that will, I think, stick with me throughout the coming years, and just be kind of cemented in terms of all-time favorite books. I do have some things that will be carrying over into May, and so I won't talk about those here. I'm gonna save those for my May wrap-up. But let me know what you really enjoyed in April, or maybe some disappointing books if you had some disappointing ones as well. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye.